Hi guys, welcome back. This is part 3 of my miniature bookstore builds, and I am so excited for this part because I am officially moving inside the bookstore and I am creating kind of the main feature of this entire build, which are built-in bookshelves. So I'm going to be taking you through the entire process. So to kick it off, you actually do not need many materials for this project particularly. Basically, you need a variety of basswood pieces. Besides that, you need some decorative trim depending on the look that you're going for. I get most of my decorative wood trim from MiniatureCrush. She has an Etsy and she also has a website that you can order from, and I will have that linked in the description. For the rest of the materials, the actual tools that you're going to need, like Fisker's shears, miter shears, wood glue, tape, all of that stuff is available on my Amazon storefront, and that is also going to be listed in the description. And it's a really great resource just to kind of see what tools and materials that you can use for your miniature projects. Not all of them are absolutely essential, but a lot of them are. When it comes to tools and materials, I like to keep it pretty pared back, and I like to keep it as simple as possible. So you can find all of that stuff in my description. So kicking this off, I am taking some wider basswood pieces and I am cutting them down to go from floor to ceiling. And then I am essentially placing 2 strips where I want a divider to be in the bookshelf. And the reason I'm using 2 strips instead of just 1 is because I might be putting some kind of wall sconce or some kind of lighting in those in-between spaces, and so I wanted to leave some kind of gap potentially for wiring. Also, it was kind of a desired thickness of that area of the shelf because I want it to feel really substantial and really prominent in the space. And so once I have those glued down with some wood glue, I'm going to start cutting down strips for the actual shelves. So for these long divider pieces, I'm using a pretty thick basswood. It's just kind of easier to work with when building something structural. And then when it comes to the shelves, I'm using a much thinner basswood. But both of them are the same thicknesses, which is also going to really simplify this process. And so what I do when I'm establishing the shelves within the built-in is I put the very top shelf and the bottom shelf, and that's going to help me figure out exactly how many shelves I want to have within the unit. And so now that I have the essential structure of the built-in shelves established, I'm going to start going in and putting in some of those more finishing touches. So I'm going to take a thinner piece of basswood and I'm going to close up those gaps between the shelves, and that is going to act as the base for any supporting trim that's going to go on top. And so I'm putting those basswood strips to close up the gaps, and now the foundation of the shelf is really kind of starting to come to life. And to install these basswood pieces, I'm using the same wood glue. My go-to glue is wood glue. Unless I'm working with plastics or metals, I'll typically always be using wood glue. Now that I have those gaps closed up, I'm going in with even thinner basswood strips, and I'm going to start building out trim details on those vertical sections. I'm closing up the top of the bookshelves now. I'm leaving a pretty nice amount of space because I plan on going in with a lot of trim and crown molding just to really go there and bring the vision to life. Because there is so much trim and detail on the outside of the store, I want that to be reflected on the inside as well where it makes sense. And so I'm closing up those gaps on the very top, but I'm leaving them hollow on the inside just in case I want to potentially put some kind of lighting feature above the shelves instead of sconces. Maybe I'll do some kind of picture light. And so once I have all of those gaps pretty much closed up, I am going in with the smaller basswood pieces, and here is where I'm going to start building out the trim. So you don't always need decorative trim to get the details that you want, you can use really simple, basic shapes and materials to get something detailed. And a lot of times it works out better that way because it gives you this really layered look, and that feels really authentic to architecture and built-in features. And it also gives it a lot of depth. And now we're getting into the fun part. We're getting into more of the decorative pieces of trim. So I'm taking these square pieces and I'm putting them at the top of each pillar between the shelves. And it's just gonna kind of ground the built-in. There is a lot of vertical line work happening, and this is going to help kind of cut that off and make it foundational. I keep a variety of trim pieces stocked in my studio. It allows for a more creative and intuitive process when I'm working on things. And so I have had this style of trim in my collection for a while now, and I've been looking for the right thing to use it for, and I just felt like it fit so perfectly in the style of this bookstore and kind of where I want it to go. And so I used that at the very top. I made the very top shelf a little bit taller because I think I'm going to have more decorative items on those shelves and not just books. Another way to take your shelves to the next level is to put some decorative trim or just some flat pieces of basswood to make the shelves seem a little bit thicker than what they are. This is going to make it look a lot more realistic, and it's going to give it some more depth, and it's not going to look like it was made out of really thin pieces of wood that were just glued together. It's really going to give it that kind of built-in structural feature in your project. And so for this top shelf, since it is a standout shelf in the unit, I'm using a decorative piece of trim to kind of signify that. And then for the rest of the shelves, I'm taking a thin piece of basswood and I'm just gluing it onto the end and making sure that the top is completely flush. And it's just going to give it a little bit more of a substantial look. And to close up the gap at the very bottom, that is where I'm taking the baseboard that I'm going to use, and that is going to give just a little bit more detail. And so now that I have the shelving part pretty much complete, I'm going to start giving a little bit more attention to the upper part of the shelves between the shelving and where the ceiling is going to be. So I'm using this really pretty trim piece that has a lot of line work, and it's just going to kind of give a really nice finish to the top of the shelves. Once I install the ceiling, I will then go in with the more detailed crown molding, but I don't want to do that yet because I like to seal that with adhesive caulk, which is another tool that is absolutely essential to your toolbox because it just helps give a clean, finished, and sealed look to anything that you're working on. And so I'm essentially just laying the base for what I will do in the future. And the bookshelves are pretty much complete structurally, and I'm going in with that adhesive caulking that I was just talking about, and I'm sealing up any gaps. And once that is all set, it is time to start painting. So I'm using Patio Stone by Behr Paint. I always use interior paints for my projects. And the bookshelves are complete. I'm so happy with how these turned out. I really feel like it's making the statement that I wanted it to make within this bookstore, and I'm so excited to be filling it with books soon. I think that's really gonna take it to the next level. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you are looking for more content from me, make sure to check out my Instagram and TikTok. And I also have a Patreon channel where I share exclusive content like tutorials, videos, classes, and I just kind of update my patrons on my projects that I'm currently working on. Also, some really exciting news is I'm going to be opening my online shop in July. This is where I'm going to be selling some trim work and architectural details like corbels and things like that I custom design and 3D print. And this is connected to Patreon because my patrons are going to be getting early access to the shop as well as some discounts. So if you are interested in that, make sure to check it out. All of it is going to be in the description, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.